Epstein's been dead for a long time. If Donald Trump was in any of the files, the Democrats, Joe Biden, all of them would have released it a long time ago. It's a bunch of gibberish for people to think otherwise. The Democrat Party hates Donald Trump with a passion. That's why they created the shutdown. If Donald Trump would say that he hated oxygen, they would stop breathing.
It really raises questions about what the relationship was between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein and what Donald Trump actually knew. Obviously, one of the emails from Jeffrey Epstein alleges that Donald Trump may have spent considerable time with one of the victims. There's another email from Jeffrey Epstein that essentially says that Trump may have known about the girls, whatever that may mean. And so what it really does is it raises questions. At this moment, Donald Trump can answer those questions by releasing all of the Epstein files. There's a subpoena out for them. The Department of Justice to do its job and release the files.
I think that the American people deserve clarity on this issue. I think they're going to get it, right? I mean, the votes are there for the discharge petition, and I don't think that that's we're going to find out here very, very soon.
Are you going to vote for it?
I would likely not vote for the discharge petition, but I just don't think that's the right procedural way to go about it. I also have very serious concerns. Look, we had about 12 victims of Jeffrey Epstein and that kind of cobble that exists around them that, very clearly want all of the files to come out. The problem is there's 1,000 victims here. And there was 990 that weren't standing out there because they actually don't want these files released, because this is a part of their lives that's very embarrassing to them. They don't want their dirty laundry drugged through the mud. They don't want their name drugged through the public sphere. And you've got to balance that. What do the victims want with how do we ultimately get to justice and clarity for the American people? We think that we have a proper procedure for that going through the oversight and judiciary committees right now.
I think it just makes clearer that the president absolutely knows what Jeffrey Epstein was up to. We know that he was hanging out at Jeffrey Epstein's house. We know that he was hanging out with folks who have accused Jeffrey Epstein of sexual crimes. And we know that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell actively discussed how to manage Donald Trump. And in that very email from 2011 where they're discussing this, he even says that Donald Trump is the dog that had him barked, and he mentions the police. And so, I don't know, I find it interesting. We're in the year 2025. That's 14 years after that email was sent. And here, the President of the United States is involved in potentially the largest cover-up in American history of not only criminal sex trafficking, but also financial crimes.
Overall, the Epstein files, to me, we released a bunch of files were released. Everyone wants to say Donald Trump. Listen, Donald Trump has nothing to do with Epstein. We just need to move past it. Let's move on. Let's move on from that silliness.
I think it's a disgrace the way that this pedophile protection conference, the House Republicans, have been trying to shield Donald Trump from accountability. What those emails clearly demonstrated is that Mr. Epstein and Ms. Maxwell knew that Donald Trump had obviously been engaging with the underage girls. And it is such a tragedy to see our nation's leaders try to block accountability. Those women, those girls, but now women, deserve justice.
But I want transparency in the Epstein files, and I've said that from day one, from the very beginning, that I am for that transparency, and I'm going to continue to vote for transparency. I voted for the release of the files through the Government Reform or Government Affairs Committee, and I'm going to continue to be for transparency there.
I mean, that's the act of a guilty conscience. If President Trump was not involved with Jeffrey Epstein, if he was not personally involved, and if these emails and what's indicated inside them, if he's confident that they were false, I don't think that he would be calling Republican members of Congress to try to block their release. And so I think that it's quite damning.
Congress has been doing our job. I sit on oversight, so we're actually running some of the investigations. It's bipartisan. We've been promised names of the alleged perpetrators and criminals that were engaged in the trafficking from the victims. But also it's important to note that at the same time, there is also a class action lawsuit against Deutsche Bank from the victims. And so we have not been able to obtain that list of names yet. But I think I'm just as curious as everyone else is. I've been on this train since the beginning and pushing for this, even when it wasn't politically popular. But also at the same time, I do think that it's wrong for people to use this to smear the president. We know that, unfortunately, God rest her soul, but Virginia Giuffre was actually the one that said that President Trump is not involved. And so the attempt to, I think, implicate the president in all of this is just not okay.
Read the email. There is an email from 2011 from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell in which he says that Donald Trump is one of the only ones that has embarked and spent hours with one of the victims and even mentions the police. So I don't know how you can read that email and not understand that to mean that Donald Trump knew what Jeffrey Epstein was up to, knew that he was engaged with underage girls and involved in sex trafficking, and is also potentially implicated in covering up and maybe even involved in the crimes themselves. So that's not cherry picking, that's just called reading.
This administration has done more with respect to transparency when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein than any administration ever. In fact, this administration, the Department of Justice, has turned over tens of thousands of documents to the American people. We are cooperating and showing support for the House Oversight Committee. That's part of the reason you are seeing these documents that were released today, because of the House Oversight Committee's and Republicans' efforts to get these out to the public. This administration also moved, the Department of Justice also moved to unseal grand jury testimony, which we know, unfortunately, a judge declined those requests. So this administration has done more than any, and it just shows how this is truly a manufactured hoax by the Democrat Party. For now, they're talking about it all of a sudden because President Trump is in the Oval Office. But when Joe Biden was sitting in there, the Democrats never brought this up. This wasn't an issue that they cared about because they actually don't care about the victims in these cases. They care about trying to score political points against President Trump.